Hi, my name's Amie Shrum, and today we're going to talk about how to teach third graders fractions using pattern blocks. The standard that we'll be addressing today is standard 3.nf.a.1, and that is to understand a fraction 1b as the quantity formed by one part when a whole is partitioned into b equal parts, a unit fraction. Understand a fraction AB as the quantity formed by A parts of size 1b. For this activity, you'll need a few hexagons, trapezoids, rhombi, and triangles for each student. The first example we'll look at is one that lets students explore fractions. So it asks, if the hexagon represents one whole, then which block would represent the fraction 1/6? So to begin, students would place the hexagon on their desk and realize that that represents the one whole. Next, students would look for the pattern block that would allow them to divide this hexagon into 6 equal parts. This may take some trial and error, so students might want to try a rhombus and count 1, 2, 3, so that doesn't work. After this trial and error, students may want to look for a smaller shape. They may try a triangle. Students will lay the triangles over the hexagon to see how many times they can partition it using this shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 triangles. Now that we've partitioned into 6 equal pieces, we know that one triangle by itself would be the fraction 1/6. Our next example would be a little more open-ended. It would ask students to show a representation of 2/3 using the pattern blocks. For this activity, students might also want to use the hexagon as one whole, but it's okay to let them explore with other shapes as one whole. They will again look for another pattern block that will allow them to partition into 3 equal parts because our denominator is 3. Students should explore to find that the rhombus would allow them to partition in 3 equal sections. Be sure to explain to students that the number of times we partition the whole is the denominator of our fraction, while the numerator is comprised of the number of pieces we're using for the specific fraction. So 2/3 in this case would be 2 of the rhombi. Once students explore more, they'll understand that they could also use the trapezoid as a whole. In doing so, they would use the triangle to partition into thirds. In this case, 2/3 would be represented by 2 triangles. For the third example, students would be asked to go a little deeper into a real-life situation. Janie has one cookie. She would like to share it with Katie and Chelsea. What fraction would represent the amount of cookie Janie would receive? First, students would begin by defining their whole. In this case, we'll use the hexagon. The student would then again explore to find which way they could partition to get 3 equal parts for each person in the problem. After some trial and error, the student should find that the rhombi would allow them to partition in 3 equal parts. Students should recall that since we've partitioned the whole cookie into 3 equal pieces, that our denominator would be 3 for this fraction. So since Janie only gets 1 piece of the whole cookie, that number would be our numerator. This would mean that Janie only gets 1/3 of the cookie. For example 4, students are asked to think in a different way. The question is, if the triangle represents the fraction 1/2, then which block would represent one whole? So here, students are given the information that the triangle represents 1/2. So they use that information and what they've already learned, that the denominator notes how many pieces are in the whole. So the student would know that there are 2 triangles in the whole. Once they find this information, they can look for the shape that matches 2 triangles put together, and in this case, the whole is a rhombus. Our last example, students would be asked, if the triangle represents fraction 1/3, then which block would represent one whole? So again, students would begin this problem with the triangle representing 1/3. They would understand that because 3 is the denominator, there would be 3 of these triangles to make one whole. So again, students would match the shape that is comprised of three triangles to get the one whole, and in this case it is a trapezoid.